What's up, Rene? The question that I have for you this evening, I hear a lot of different opinions in regards to the Taino language, and I feel this is where many people who want to learn get confused. So I would like, if you can give your take in regards to the subject.
Well, the Taino language is hard to say. The question is, what is the Taino language? As far as we can tell, as far as I can tell as well, when you start looking down each word, you start seeing some Arawak words, and you start seeing a lot of Carib words, which is the male and the female language. And it's really difficult to say. What is it? Is Taino? I mean, now Taino is more of a. If you look at the Garifuna language, it's more Arawakan, right? Because it kind of dominated the male kind of language, the Carib language. But the question is, what is the Taino language? As far as I can see, the language seems very claudioscopic. It's a very mixed, and there's a lot of loaned words. They have a little bit of some Guarani, a little bit of some Wayu, just maybe a few words, a lot of Kalinago words, which is Arawak, in Carib. So, the question is, what is Taino language? To me, Taino language is a very claudioscopic language that's just have roots from different places in South America of all types of tribes, you know what I mean? So, how? I really don't know. That's a good question. But what I can say is that if you look at the Kalinago and the Kalinago history, you start realizing that, the Kalinago is kind of spoke more than one dialect too, According to the pirates and the French, they said that the ones that were going to war spoke a different dialect than opposed to the women, which is Arawak, and the children. So even the elders spoke a different language, and they didn't understand. Even it's possible that even the medicinal men or the shamans spoke a different language. So we really don't really know, but we do know is that it's very Arawakan based, but there are different branches of Arawak. You have Guarani's Arawak and Locono's Arawak, so it's very complex, because it's hard to me it gets more difficult and difficult the more I dig deep into it, and it's very hard to look deep into the Taino language. That's what I'll say. It's very broad, and it's a mixed of different branches of Arawak and lineages.
In regards to what was recorded, are there any discrepancies?
I would say yes. There's a lot of discrepancies. You see, the thing with the Taino language, you have to be extremely careful when you're looking at each word. Actually, picking out a word. I'll give you an example. In Locono, there's certain words. I mean, not in Locono, but in some Arawakan languages, they have words that were influenced by the Europeans. Like Locono for sandal. You would think that when I first started researching Locono, I found that they have the word for sandal, zapato, zabate, and that's just the Spanish for zapato. And there's just certain words, like in Garifuna, the word for donkey is burike. Burike. And, people looking at this word, they would think, wow, the donkey is actually an indigenous word, burike. But no, the difference is there was no donkeys until the Europeans came. And it actually comes from the Spanish burro, which means donkey. It's just that they call it burrique, burro. So you have to be really careful every time we look at each word. And in my opinion, when we do that, we have to actually look at European lineages, like European languages, like Spanish, Latin, even some Catalan words. So, like I think I mentioned this before in one of your videos when Panay recorded one of the names of Atabe. He said one of her names was Yamao, and Yamao is a Catalan word for Hema, and which we get the word hermano or hermao, so which means brother. So we really have to be extremely careful, and it's still to this day there's some words that they have that was extremely influenced by the Spanish. I actually remember the post I wrote a post trying to I was actually wrong about this, and there's a town in Humacao in Puerto Rico where called Mambiche, and Mambiche is very similar to the Kalinago word Mambiche, and what it means is mosquito. And I had a theory that was interesting is that bihet or bichet, the Kalinago word bihet is for bija, which was used for the mosquito repellent, which makes sense that it's called Mambichet. Now, in Puerto Rico, the word which is used as a vulgar, a very bad word, is called bicho. And I actually thought that there was a connection between bichet and bicho. And I was wrong. It actually comes from the Latin vulgar. Actually, I got to give credit to one of the guys that was on one of the Facebook groups. I forgot his name, but he said that it comes from the word bestia, which means, because apparently bicho means insect or bug, but it comes from Latin bestia, and which means monster or bug, you know what I mean, or creature. So this is what I mean about being very careful of some of the words, because there's a lot of discrepancies in most of our words. You got to be extremely careful. Some of the words are even Latinized, like Luquillo, coming from Yucahu or loco to comes Loquillo. So it's a little bit, it's a mixture of both native and Spanish, Loquillo. I said this before on the radio. I mean, in the last video that we did, I will not say it again, but yes, there's a lot of discrepancies on the words, so we have to be extremely careful. And I think, in my opinion, each word that we see or we find that we still use today in the islands, as a researcher, what I'll do is, I would look at the Latin, or the Spanish, Catalan, and other types of languages, just to see if they have any, and also you have to check. For example, the reason I looked in Latin, because you have to see when it became part of the Spanish lexicon. So, for example, the French called the Kalinago for the bija was called ruku, but the French call it ruku too. So, when did that become part of the French lexicon? You see, so we have to look kind of deeper into the roots. When did that change? Did it change when they came into the islands, then they inherited the word, or they already had it prior? So it's very adamant to really look deep to see when it became part of the words. It could be a long word. I mean, we really don't know, but in my opinion, we really got to be careful of some of the words we use. So yeah, I would say there's a lot of discrepancies.
Yeah, Rene. So my next question is there a Taino language today? Because from what I see, there's not enough documentation. We don't know what the Tainos spoke day to day, but we do know how the Kalinagos spoke day to day. So I just would like to know your take in regards.
See, that's a kind of that's a tricky question, because the Taino language, like I said before, it's kaleidoscopic. You know what I mean? It's a mix. Now, if you look at the French chronicles, right? If you start looking at the French, the way they encounter the Kalinagos people, according to the Kalinagos oral tradition, according to their stories, before they came into the island, they said that they were a group of ancient ones, as they call them, Arawajes, which is the other term for Arawak. That's what they call them. And they say that these people were there before them. And that's what they call them, the ancient ones. Meaning they must have been here way before them. Now, if you're talking about classic, it's possible, like classic Taino, it was probably predominantly Arawakan before the Caribs came, or the Karinako came into the islands, and kind of mixing in with them and taking the wives and having children and creating now a very kaleidoscopic language. So like if you look in Quisqueya, you know, you start realizing that there are other dialects there too. There are the Siguayo, Macuri, Siboney, Guanajuato Bay language. Now if you look at there is, according to Cranberry, he says that the word Quisqueya could have been a Dolan word for Quisqueya, Quisqueyan, which supposedly mean like high mountain or something. So this is some possibility that there's some kind of influence of Central America, a little bit of, because the Dolan is the Toltec language, you know what I mean, from that way of DR. Probably just a little bit, not too much, because it's the only word that they ever recorded was Tuap, which means gold, in the Dolan. It's not really much recorded, but it could have been, they probably just came to visit, you know, and just whatever. I mean, that happened at that time. So now to say what is the Taino language now, I mean, it's hard, because it's now you have some Kalinago language, which is a mix. You have some Carib, you have some Arawak, you have a little bit of other Arawak like Guarani, Wayu, a little bit, not too much. Warao, you know. So what is it? I mean, I would say a Caribbean language, you know, or an indigenous. It's hard to explain. I have no words for it, because saying the Taino language is like you're trying to say it is one language, and it's one language with different
branches.
Exactly.
So would you say that's where the misconceptions come in?
Exactly. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, it's like I would say it's one language with different branches of other languages. That's what I'm saying. That it's kaleidoscopic. It's a spectrum of different roots, you know, creating a very complex language, you know. And you know, it's not really complex because the natives still spoke it, and some of them realized what they were talking about already, you know. It's possible maybe some spoke, because according to the French, they actually, the Kalinagos spoke more than one dialect, you know.
Now I would like to ask, when I read about the Spanish, when they talk about the Taino and the Carib, what's the difference? Because I see people get confused with that also.
The Carib and the Kalinago?
Yeah, because like, you know, they talk about the Taino as good and then the Caribs as bad.
Yeah, so the misconception is, this is the thing. When the Spanish came to the Americas, and the Bojillo, and the little huts they had, they found bones there, and we both know that the bones were put there because they represent the ancestors. They thought the ancestors go to the spiritual world. When the Spanish came in and saw the bones, they thought, oh wait a minute, these people are eating them, you know. So it's just that it was a misunderstanding, because you're talking about a group of people who didn't understand the practices and spiritualities of the natives, you know. They didn't understand. So they right away. But what the thing is, they did eat people. But what happened? They would eat their enemies. You know, it's not like they ate them because they were hungry. It was something that they believed that when they eat the enemies, they were getting stronger from them. They were getting their souls. You know, So, and to actually prove a point, to scare them. Like, listen, you know, if you mess with me, I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna eat you, and I'm gonna eat your soul. You know, so the Taino people weren't good. They were like humans. I mean, they were good. I'm just saying, it was just like humans today. You have good and bad people, and you have good people who just, they had to kill in order to protect themselves. You know, it doesn't mean that they were bad. It was sometimes a school of self-defense.
So we can say that they were like any other people, you know, families that, you know, they would
of course
have disputes.
Yeah, that's what it was. It's just, it was, you know, to say that the Taino people were very friendly. Of course they were friendly. You know what I mean? You know, some of them weren't. I mean, look at the example of Agua Bana, right? According to the chronicles, Juan Ponce de Leon said, well, according that Agua Bana was more friendlier than his brother. And when Agua Bana died, his brother was very, maybe warlike. He didn't like the Spaniards at all. He was the one that kind of set it off and went to war with the Spaniards. He did not like it, you know. So Agua Bana was more of a peaceful person. Maybe he was more wiser because he was older, as opposed to his younger brother, who was more younger and less wiser. So I mean, we Taino people was just like every other human, man. I mean, they were fighting before the Spaniards came in, you know. And it wasn't even about land sometimes. Sometimes it was just about taking women. But there is evidence to suggest that in PR, the Caribs came. This is the thing about the French and the Taino people that most people don't understand is they had like a weird relationship, you can say. And it's probably because it was a relationship we would never understand. You know what I mean? We're talking about a group of Indians, natives. He had a very, very eccentric friendship in a way, or watiao in a way. Even though they went to war with the Arawaks, when the Spanish came, then they came out to their side and fought amongst them to fight the Spaniards. This is recorded in Puerto Rico. So the Caribs, or the Carinas, came to help the Arawaks to fight against the Spanish together. So there's evidence of this. Now, this is why that they say that it's possible Puerto Rico was like a Carib island, but they, you know, if you look at it, this is how Puerto Rico or Borinquen became very like almost a Carib-like island. Is it possible that, you know, because the women came from there too, and they had said, listen, we got to go help them. We have to go help out where we originated from. Because if you look at the word, the Kainaga word for Borinquen, Borical, means, according to them, is where our parents came from. You know, so that is a weird relationship, but they did back them up when they had to defend themselves against the Spanish. This is recorded, and I can prove it. I got it there, you know.
Yes, so you just said a word that just hit me, and I feel is very important. Could you explain the word watiao?
So watiao is it's like saying like our friend or our brother. When you Google it, you see it means blood brother or something, you know, which is very interesting, right? But it's like another word for Taino, like we discussed this, you know. It's like saying my friend or relative. It's like a cousin and a brother. It's like saying my cousin or brother. It's like you have a male cousin, but you can call me a brother too, but he's your cousin. You know, it's kind of almost the same type of meaning to it, definition to it, you know. He's still your relative. You get what I'm saying? So what I found was that watiao is the same. The Kalinago have this word as wation, but the French just at the end, so it could just have been watian or wation. And the Garifuna have watian. And what I found was that it both meant something about relative, being related or family oriented. So this goes to show that like Taino or watiao, everything has to, or ni Taino, everything has to do with being related, a relation to it, you know. There's this thing I wanted to say. The the natives, you know, like you heard about Ganabo, the names of them. When they went to islands, they didn't say. Actually, they didn't give out their real names. You know what I mean? Because they were afraid that, because you understand, these people were very superstitious. So if you know my name is Rene, so I'm not gonna give you my real name. I'm probably gonna change my name to someone's like Joey or something. And actually, the natives never actually called themselves by names. So this is one thing that has to be understand. They called each other's a cousin, friend, brother, sister. If they see one of their cousins, they call themselves sister. A female cousin, say sister. They see one of their cousins, they call them brother. So it's the same as an aunt. They called it mother. So they didn't really call themselves a name. There was no names for them.
Sorry to jump in, but could that also be because the environment they lived in?
Right. It could have been, and also because they thought that if you were to know their real name, you were going to do a spell. Because these people were very superstitious. You know, they thought that if you understand their name, the enemies can know and do like a bad spell or maboya to them. You know what I mean? An evil thing to them. Maboya means like a devilish or evil spirit. So they were very superstitious people. You know, so this is one of the things that's when the shamans come in and do some type of spiritual blessings, so that maboya doesn't have to attack them. So this is one of the reasons why when the children when they get sick and the shaman would cure them, what he would do is he would change his name. You know, he doesn't have no name no more, because now he became a newborn. You know, so that's the name that he comes for. So you know, they didn't call each other by names. It was always by the same brother, sister, cousin, auntie, as we do today. You know, but they didn't call each other by names. So that's one thing that we all have to understand. But why, when the Spanish came, maybe why did these people call them their name? It could be maybe they would talk, maybe the foreigners, but that's a good question. Why did Agua Bana told Juan Pozo de Leon his name? We really know. Maybe that wasn't his name. Maybe he was just talking about something. We really never know, because there's Agua Bana in the Dominican Republic too. You know what I mean? There is. And so this is just a lot of things that we have to be really careful when we read the Chronicles. We have to take it with a grain of salt. You know? When I read the French, I don't find no names there of the natives when I read the Kainagos. It looks like the natives didn't find any names. What they record was that they called each other by cousins, brothers. You know, it could have been, is it possible that Dominican Republic is a little different than Puerto Rico? Is it possible the system, the way it is, like there's a word for that, where amongst them in DR is a little unique, the way Puerto Rico works, you know? It's possible, because when I look at the languages of the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, there is some kind of different, there's some differentiations there, you know? What we do know is that the eastern side of the Dominican Republic and the western side of Puerto Rico are very similar. But is it possible the west side of the Dominican Republic is different as opposed to the eastern side of Puerto Rico? I mean, of the Dominican Republic? We really don't know. The only way we can know is just by studying the towns, the name of the towns, and trying to trace them the same as Puerto Rico. Like Higüey, there is a Puerto Rico, like Higüey in the Dominican Republic, there's a Higüey in Mayagüez. You know, there's a Mocha in the Dominican Republic. There's a Mocha in the west side of Puerto Rico. See, this is interesting. There's a Mocha on the eastern side of the Dominican Republic, and there's a Mocha on the western side of Puerto Rico. So, you know, we have to really there's still more studies we just have to be done, and it's very difficult. This stuff has not been done before, but we have to look at other different variations of going into this stuff. So, but yeah, Watiao, it just means like my relative, my friend. So I traced this with the Garifuna and the Kalinago. So, as you know, Garifuna is the same as the Kalinago people. If you know the history of the Garifuna people, they came from St. Vincent. In the 17 or 1600s, they came out from Dominica and St. Vincent, and the British took them and brought them to Central America, creating the Garifuna. Garifuna is Karinaco, which, let me make it clear here. The Kalinago is actually a French creation. The L, they replaced the L with the R. The real name is Garinaco or Karinaco, like Garifuna. Comes from because the women called themselves Garibuna. Garibunan, as in Garifuna. Okay? It's the R. The French replaced it with the L. Just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, so closing out, in regards to the studies that's being done, in regards to the language, there's not enough to resurrect a Taino language. If we're going to create a language, it's going to be a new language because the Spanish did not record day-to-day conversations, so it's going to be entirely new. And yeah, just shed your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of work. The Europeans didn't record enough words to create a new language. So it's, to create a new language, it's going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be difficult as well. Like when you read Dudley, if you read this book here by Dudley, he traveled from Trinidad and up, and when you start researching his collection of words, you start realizing that he has a little bit of some Arawak and some Carib words together, and it's very Locono-ish too, some of the words he has, and that makes sense because Trinidad is like right in the borderline of South America, right by Venezuela, where a lot of the French Guyana is at. Guyana is like right across, so a lot of Locono people there, so that kind of really, really makes sense. But yeah, to create a new language, you gotta use perhaps some Carib, some Kalinago, some Arawak, some Locono. So to make it very Taino-ish, because Taino is very, like I said before, there's different branches of it, So but to do that is going to be very complex.
If I could just jump in my opinion, when we observe the Locono, the Kalinago, and the Garifuna, their pronominals are very similar, whereas when we look at Wayu, it's not exactly the same. We can see that there was a change.
There was a change, yeah, most definitely was a change. It's just like the Taino people, their language, it was a change too. For example, what we know was for gold, that was recorded for gold, was Gaona,
right?
Correct? So Gaona, I think we had this discussion before,
right?
That you made a good point before that you said for gold was Gacona, right? So what if Gaona was wrongfully pronounced by the Spanish as saying Ana Gacona instead of Ana Gaona? You get what I'm saying to you?
Right.
Because we had this discussion. Because the Spanish, remember, didn't speak. So now, the word for gold, there was two of the numbers recorded. That was another word that was recorded for gold, according to Spanish, was Garocuri, which apparently for nose ring, which is not nose ring. It means gold. In gold is Garocuri. You can trace this in other languages. Kainago have it, they call it Garocuri, gold. And so you can see now, right, that there's two words we have now, right, for gold. Garocuri and supposedly Kaona. So, how are we going to create a new language, right? If you're trying to make it very Taino, if we have two different languages meaning the same thing, of two different words, of two different languages, calling it the same name. That's like saying, it's like an American language. American language is it's different languages. What's an American language? Right?
That's a good point.
No, really, what is an American language? How can we create an American language? Is it English? Right?
Definitely not English.
It's not English.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's Spanish, it's Arabic, it's Russian, it's Jewish, it's Native American, it's Navajo. What is an American language? So so that's the thing what I'm trying to say here. You know, is an American language really broadly? It's broadly English, but we have to understand what American is. America is it's very different races and different languages. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in South America, what's in South America, for example? Colombian is predominantly Spanish, but the Colombian has also what? In Colombia they kind of mix this up a little bit, because you do have some Native American languages there mixed with Spanish, because they speak two dialects.
Well, like with Guajiro.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like Guajiro. So, you know, you have you have the natives there who speak Spanish and they speak their native tongue. Garifuna people, they speak Spanish and they speak the Garifuna. They speak their native tongue. So it's very difficult to create a new language. I mean, we could. I'm not saying you can't. You could. It's just that it's going to be very difficult. It's just going to be, you know, you have to really take out from different to make it very Taino-ish, you know.
Yeah, I think in regards to that, we have to keep a realistic outlook in regards to language reconstruction, because it's very tedious, and at times it can get very frustrating. Frustrating, as you mentioned earlier, in regards to tracing words to determine if they are indigenous or if they are of European extraction.
It's very frustrating, even for me. Like, every word that I'm thinking that, okay, is it possible? I'll give you a great example, and this is a theory here. There's this fish that was recorded in Puerto Rico and by the western side of PR. It's like the tiny fish, like very tiny. You catch them. They usually, when they go fishing, they use like fish nets because they're so tiny. They call this fish seti. Can seti be Arawakan? Now you hear me pronouncing it, right? It sounds very native. In Cuba, they call it teti. But now when I look into the Garifuna language, the word for small fishing net is neti. Right? Could it be that the reason they called it for small fishing net because it says net and neti? Right? So now this is the thing I'm trying to get at. Seti, it could be, I believe Locono call it fehi for the small fish. One of those languages, they call it fehi, or Garifuna call it fehi. I don't know. But we have to be careful, because seti can come from the Latin word for the fish. In astrology, we know this in Pisces. They call it Cetus. And Cetus is almost a similar spelling of Seti. Seti is C-E-T-I. Cetus is C-E-T-U-S. Okay, you see how I'm saying it?
Yeah.
So we have to be really careful now. Could Seti be the influence of Cetus? I mean, can Cetus be the influence for Seti? You know, because it's both fishes. They're both fish creatures. I mean, so that's what I mean about how difficult can it be. And some people will argue saying, I don't know. I mean, but I'm saying is that's true. We just have to be really careful. We just got to find more evidence. If Taino is so Arawakan, let's trace more Arawakan languages to find that the traces of this word.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is, rather than jumping the gun, we should take more time into digging deep into the languages to see how far the relationships goes.
Exactly, because it we can make a big mistake if we don't. You know, there's a lot of traces of words that are from the Spanish, and we have to be extremely careful when we use them. You know, there's a lot of words that I found that's in an indigenous. For example, taita. You know, taita. In the Guarani, they say taita for an elder or an aunt. In Spain, they call it teata, teita, or tata. They say tata. So we really have to be careful. Like mataratata, I think I forgot the name, but it means like great-great-grandmother. You know, so could this been influenced from Spanish? It's possible. You know what I mean? So we just have to be extremely careful. That's what I'm saying to you. You know, and just making sure that this is it's not, because we can make if you're gonna write an article, if you write something, and you're gonna make a big mistake. You know, they're gonna put you on the spot, so you have to be prepared to back up that it's actually an indigenous word. I made that mistake, but I will never make that mistake again. You know, because there's Latin and there's Vulgar Latin. So you really have to look at different types, and you have to look in Greek, you have to look in Roman. You know, Latin changed. You know, you have to look in ancient Latin. You know, and also we got to look at Arabic, because there are some languages in the Latin and Roman or in Hebrew or whatever it is, they have some Arabic words there. You know, like, so we have to be extremely careful.
All right, good point. All right, until the next bill.